Hey,
What's going on? Hello. What's up, Paul? Hey, everybody. Welcome into another special ZBrush stream. I'm here. I'm Ian Robinson, also known as AR Sculpts, and I got Paul Gabry. How you doing, buddy?
Great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. We got some really cool stuff today, I think, to share. What say you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It should be a lot of fun. As I always say, buckle up and get ready for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of people in the chat coming in, which is awesome. So happy to have you all here joining us today. So we're going to be going over a few stuff within ZBrush. And I say, you know, unless there's anything else, Paul, I think we should just get into it.
No, I'm excited to show everybody what we've been up to and what's been going on. So I know we're going to start with Ian today, and then I will sprinkle in occasionally. I'm here for support, Ian. I'm here for your support.
Perfect. I appreciate the support. It's always super helpful.
Betcha.
I just say, like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. We're good. All right, let's go. All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So right now you can see that I have this Velociraptor I've been working on up here. And I really wanted to cover this new feature that we've been working on and kind of showcase what it really can do. So without further ado, I'm just not even going to tease anymore. We're just going to talk about it. So I have this raptor mesh right here. And now if you go under geometry, we have, I'm going to use the magnifying glass right here. We have a new menu called Proxy Pose. And if I open this thing up, what Proxy Pose does is it takes your mesh and it's going to go ahead and basically, in a way, decimate it down so that you can utilize it and make big changes to your model quickly. So what you can also notice too is I have subdivisions on right now. And I really want to call this out because this is really, really cool. So right now I have a merged model with subdivision level 4, and we're working at about 3.4 million polys right now. So not too big, not too large. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hide this mesh, and I'm going to come over here and introduce the sliders. So we have Proxy Pose as the main button. We have a reduction amount. And then we have keep details. We have a polish slider, and we also have a freeze border. Really, I'm just going to focus on kind of the basic introduction of how to utilize it. So as you can see, my model has some interesting details, and it also has some kind of sharp points here. So what I am actually going to do is I'm going to first initiate the keep sliders detail just a little bit. You know, maybe say something like 10 or 13. That's good. And now I'm going to just start clicking and dragging this up. And it might be a little hard to see, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on the wireframe, and I'm going to go ahead and Control Z that. So you see I have my mesh here. Again, with subdivisions, if I do Shift D, drop it down, step up, they're there. Now I go ahead and start clicking and dragging the slider, and you can see here it's optimizing my mesh, and it's actually, in a sense, like tessellating. It's decimating it down. So what I can do with this is make big changes quickly to my model. So let's just grab, like, let's say the mask lasso real fast. I'm going to select this guy here, do a quick soften, and I'm just going to go ahead and just quickly and effectively maybe just move this tail a little bit. Let's do a little bit more. Let's invert that. Let's do just a little bit more just to give you a sense of what's happening here. So I'm just going to be doing this. And let's move his head just for funsies. So I'm going to go ahead and mask off his head. I'm even going to soften it, just Control tap there. And then I'm going to move this here. And don't forget, too, in 2023, if I shift click on one of the actual arrows, it's going to take me to that viewpoint so I can quickly navigate. But I'm just going to hold Alt and maybe rotate his head just a bit. OK, perfect. Now I'm done with this. Release the mask. And what you're going to see if I go ahead and just angle this is I click Proxy Pose. It's going to take all of the high detail mesh and reproject it all back onto this mesh. So it's basically rebuilding as it goes. So we'll just go ahead and give it a second. But it's really fun because we're going to basically be able to come through and just be able to make big changes on this. And now it went ahead and projected. So you can see right here, I've already projected it back. It brought back all of my details.
Hold on, Ian. Hold on, Ian. It's actually not a projection.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. So let's make sure you guys understand what he's showing here. This is not a projection in any way, shape, or form. This is a relationship between the proxy mesh that Ian was making and the mesh that he had with the 4 subdivision level. So it's not, so it's something very different. It's not doing what you guys would be used to be doing with projections.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for the clarification. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, you're just used to saying that word. That's why.
Yeah, happens all the time. Just project, just project. No, yeah, you're absolutely correct. But again, what's really cool is when we come back and we look at that. So there are my subdivisions, and you can see the slider, and I can step back down, and I show that wireframe again, and I can step back up. So this is a really cool and fun way to make big changes to your model. But however, we're not done. We already showed like just the basic movements. We showed a little bit of posing, but it gets even more fun and interesting than that. So I'm actually going to step back just a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and go back in time. So then I have my first mesh here. And actually, let me do this real fast. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly load. I have a Dyameshed version as well. And this is something that I think is really, really fun. So I have this Dyameshed version. It's like 1.2 mil. And again, same thing. If I come here to Proxy Pose and I go ahead and drag the slider out, you can see here that it drops it down. So then I can make those big changes and then it will step it back. So if I come here, I like the keep detail slider. Just really want to call that out, especially if you have like sharp edges. Again, it's really a good way to go ahead and pick them out and keep and protect all those little points. But also what's fun is I turned this on. Now, if I go ahead and turn it off real quick, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. I want you to notice that it keeps the slider at the information in which you had set it. So if I needed to reset this to Proxy Pose and I found the perfect slider, I don't have to keep dragging the slider, just hit the button and that slider information is there for you. So again, you can come through here and you can quickly make some changes. You know, I actually want to maybe make him a little bit bigger. I don't necessarily need to use this for posing, but maybe I need to like bulk him up a little bit like that. My art director came in and said, you know, he's too skinny. He eats a lot. Let's go ahead and give him some bigger shapes. And, you know, but we don't want to lose all that detail. So we'll have him give him a bigger back, maybe a bigger neck. And then from here, we'll go ahead and hit Proxy Pose. And even on a Dyameshed model, you can see here, we went from that low, moved it, manipulated around, and then snapped it back. So really good workflows for both Dyameshed and for subdivision, which is awesome. Now, the other thing I wanted to showcase too real fast is that this also would be really helpful and useful if anybody uses ZSpheres for posing. So if we have this main mesh here, again, the subdivided mesh that I like, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this just because I always want to keep a duplicate when I'm working, especially with ZSpheres, because I may want to go back and adjust and always call back on my T-pose mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it by Control-Shift-D, or just coming here to that duplicate tab. And then I'm going to first set my proxy pose. So if you want to use proxy pose with ZSpheres, you want to set your proxy pose first so that you keep your vertice count the exact same when you're binding and rigging your mesh. So what I'm going to do is come here to geometry. Once again, I found a decent setting that I really like. I'm going to go ahead and hit proxy pose. So there you go. You can see this. Now I already loaded in a skeleton here. So I'm going to turn off perspective just for fun. And then now I'm going to go to adapt. And you want to make sure that your density and your Dynamesh resolution is set down to the lowest setting. And then we're going to go to our rigging. And now I'm going to pick and select the mesh. And of course, you can see just as normal, you come here and you would say, I want this raptor. And there you can now see that it's actually binding to where it selected the mesh that we have set in proxy pose. And now I'm going to go ahead and say bind to mesh. And then for those who don't know ZSpheres, up here at the very top, the draw, move, scale, and rotate, also with the WER key, you can quickly come through and start making some changes. So I'm going to just do some real quick, some subtle changes here, pull them up. And I've been playing a lot more lately with the actual ZSphere rig. So hopefully this workflow encourages some as well, because it's a lot of fun. I've been digging it. And let's just make sure that we'll set this off over here. There we go. Perfect. This up. And let's even like lift one of his legs up. So let's come through. Boop. There you go. He's going to be running a bit. Maybe we'll kind of move this in, give him just a little bit of balance. There we go. Something like that. Now what I want to do is I want to hit A to preview this mesh so we can see what we got. And then I'm going to want to save this mesh out, or basically come up here to adaptive skin and say make adaptive skin. And there's a lot of purpose for this. The main purpose is you can actually create a lot of quick poses like this using Proxy Mesh, save them out, and then bring them back in at any time that you want. So here, now that I have this this main skin up here, I can come through and just copy this and bring it back into my original scene. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste this. Now, instead of just utilizing that one mesh here, now what I can do is pick my original mesh that I set with Proxy Pose. And then under Proxy Pose, so we go to Geometry, Proxy Pose, Overwrite Pose, you'll now see a new menu that allows me to select any of the poses that I've set based off that mesh. So you can have a few of these if you want, not just one, not just two. You can create multiple different ones. As soon as I click that, now my pose snaps in, and then I can say, yep, I'm fine. Let's go ahead and say Proxy Pose. Let's turn it back off and have it rebuild, and then bring all my details back, giving me a pose that is usable and also a lot of just usable and fun. I've been really loving this whole setup. It's been really like giving me new workflows to work with. And you can see here with very little to no correction, you know, it's really looking super awesome.
Yeah, the big thing too I want to add to this, you guys, what he's showing too, you got to think about it. You can pose with transpose, you can pose with the ZSpheres, you can just, you know, do simple masking. If you do want to bring poses in from another application, this is the workflow also Ian showing. You guys could just bring those poses in as separate subtools. And as long as those proxy mesh, it's the same proxy mesh. So the vertex count has to be the same. So his original proxy mesh, you would export that and you can go pose that anywhere if you want to. Bring those in and add those as subtools, and then you can just swap between them for what he just did with the overriding. That's also a workflow that he's highlighting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And just to also add to the skeleton structure, if you want to make multiple different poses and reset, once you make your pose, I'm going to hit A one more time. When I come down here to the rigging and I just unbind that mesh, it sets it back to its original state in its T-pose state. And then I can either delete the mesh I was connected to and connect to a new mesh, or I can just straight up select another mesh when possible. And then, yes, to your point too, Paul, like you were mentioning, this also works with Transpose Master. So here I have a non-merged raptor that is actually, it has no subdivisions. It's just, you know, it's sloppy work. Good job, Ian. But if I wanted to here, I can either send it straight to Transpose Master. So let's say I just come through here and then send it on over to Transpose Master, which we're going to do it live. So give it a second. There it is. And again, there was no lower subdivision level. So this is still a pretty dense model, but now everything is merged. So now I come here to geometry. And again, I've already set a selection that I like. Just going to make sure I do some keep details, turn on that proxy pose. And now we can come through. And this was for a long time my preferred way of posing or making big changes to a model with multiple subtools. So we'll just say, yeah, something like that. And then we'll do something a little bit different just for funsies. Let's come over here. Going to come through and then just do a small rotation. Okay, just so you get the idea. Now he's looking that way. And then I can go ahead and say, turn proxy pose off. Let that go ahead and calculate and do its thing. And then we can go ahead and send it back once it's done. Beautiful. Boom, there it is. Now we go ahead and come through T-pose mesh and let it go through the process. And now here's my original model, and it's going to start making those changes on the fly, just like it would normally with Transpose Master. And there you go. So a lot of really cool and fun ways to go about doing this. What I also really like about this, just to bring in some more context and why. So I'm sure some of you might have seen this model before. This is a model that I 3D printed. And now I want to come back and I want to make some changes to this. And again, it's really dense. And it's really just, you know, a model that I would probably spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to either decimate it down or ZBrush mesh it and get it low. Where here now I can actually just come through and again, find a good setting that I really like. And what I also want to point out too is that when I'm going to go ahead and turn on my wireframe, and you'll notice that's keeping your polygroups as well. So you can just come through, isolate, and say, you know, I need that selection there, and I also need this selection here. So just make sure that you can isolate that mesh, come through, and now let's say like, yeah, I really needed his arm to be a little higher than this. Rotate this around. You know, maybe I'm actually adding another character or something, so I need room for this character to be under this arm. Just move this through, and it's sculptable too. So again, you can take the move brush. It doesn't have to just be with a gizmo. Actually come through and say like, yeah, let's make this area just a little bit bigger, a little bit bulkier. Perfect. Now his arm's over here. It's probably a little ridiculous, but hopefully you get the point. And so when we click this now, it's helping me manipulate that mesh, and it's just giving me a much easier workflow. And again, it's keeping all those details. So very little. I broke it here. That's my fault. User error. But it's keeping those details for you so that you can actually come through and make sure that you can get those changes done quickly instead of having to redo the mesh a bunch. So that's Proxy Pose, and I really, really love it. And seems good reaction from the chat. So that's always fun.
Yeah, I think that was perfect timing. People were asking. So yeah, you can do little modifications. It's not all about just doing the pose. You do have the ability to go and tweaking that proxy pose mesh. Like if you get a little crunching or some things that you want to go tweak from the pose that you've done, you can do that. And when you send it back and get back to your details, all those details will still be intact and be applied to the model. So, and again, this is not a projection. That's the big difference here. This is a relationship between the proxy mesh and the mesh you originally, in essence, your source mesh that you've sent. Okay, so it really opens up a lot of different workflows for us all with the ability, like Ian's already shown, with subdivision levels, without subdivision levels. He showed transpose master. Another thing that people have been experimenting with on our side here is you could also send meshes proxy pose first, then send it to transpose. Do some posing that you want, send it back, and then all those meshes would update, and then you can unproxy pose those. So you can either go the way that Ian showed, which proxy pose the whole T-pose mesh, or you guys could proxy pose certain subtools first, because I know a lot of us have a mixture of Dyameshed, Sculptris Pro, and this will work with anything. So it really opens up a lot of workflow for us, for sure. And I want to get in on this now and also show some other things that you can do with it. Right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I want to join the party too. Okay,
please do.
Yeah. So here's some other things thinking about using this feature and using this tool and how we'd go about wanting to do this. I think obviously rendering things is a lot of fun, but it's cool to see some of our characters have some life. So I've always called in essence, the movie palette a lot of times is art in motion. So here's a little video that I'm going to play of my gremlin doing a little bit of breathing here. Right. So having some fun with this and then having the head turn. And then there's a little bit of eye movements happening in here. It's very subtle, just experimenting, having some fun here, figuring out, hey, how can I bring my character to life a little bit? And I'm doing all that in ZBrush. That whole movie's being done in ZBrush with the timeline. And how I'm doing this is Proxy Pose also will appreciate layers. So you guys can use the layers with Proxy Pose as well. So this even gives you more options, right? So I'm going to walk you guys through a little bit how I would go about doing this so you guys can see how this would all work and get your heads wrapped around and get an idea of everything in here. And again, I'm using a mesh that's total about 7.6 million. All right. And so I'm going to turn these all off that I've pre-made in here. And I'm just going to delete them so we can start from scratch. So you guys can all understand this workflow, wrap your heads around it, and do what you want with it. Okay. So here's the full mesh. So you guys can see that. I'll turn on the polyframe so you can see what we got here as far as topology. It's from a ZRemesher, so it's really dense. Okay. And I do not currently have any subdivision levels on him. He did, but for this purpose, I kind of wanted to show off, look, if I delete them, how do I go from here, right? Especially if you're bringing meshes in that are scan data or anything else. Okay, so here's our workflow. As Ian had mentioned, our proxy pose, you're just going to either click or use the slider. So the slider is an interactive. Okay, so once you start clicking this slider, you can get way less topology. Okay, and so one thing I want to highlight with this is as you're moving this slider back and forth, you're visually seeing things change for you. And one thing I want to point out, polypaint is being maintained for us. Polygrouping is being maintained for us as well. So when I let go, up here in the top left, and so I'm going to turn on that magnifier. Look up here, right there, right? This is one of those moments for those that have watched me, my annoyingness, you're welcome. Right? So up here, when you are I'm going to undo this, all right? When you are moving this slider, you'll see there's a percentage of what we're giving you as like I can go all the way, and now we're looking at 0.1% of the total that I had previously, right? So I had around 8 million previously, right? 7.6. Now I'm sitting around 4,000. All this is still going to work. So this is my proxy mesh that's going to allow me to do whatever I want to, and whatever I do, I'm going to get all my details back when I do go forward. Okay, so I want to make sure you have an understanding of how that slider is going to work. The other thing that I want you to be aware of is the slider below this, right? So you have a number amount, okay? When you let go, it goes into Proxy Pose. But below that, there's also a keep detail slider, because you're going to have characters that are different. You have things with fingers, you have maybe ears, things like that. And then obviously I do. I have, I have some nails, some teeth, things going on behind him as well, right? So when I go to do this, I might want to tell it, hey, you know what? Why don't you keep some of the details? So I'm just going to kick this to 20. And then now when I go and use this, you can see more of my gremlin is being maintained now. And then look at that top left corner. So you see, as I'm going higher in the slider now, I'm around 6%. So I'm not going to get down to that 0.1% now. Even if I max this out, let's see what we get to. We get to 6.4. So that is the lowest I can go. So the point of this keep details was there are times where you guys are going to be wanting to throw meshes at the proxies that will have small details, small items, and you might want to be able to maintain those as much as you can. So when you go and do those movements, I wanted to make sure you guys are highlighting this, because this becomes important too for now the workflow that I'm going to get into here with the layers. So for my guy, I didn't really need to have any details, and I could live I lived right around here. I have found for me, I live around like 1% usually in that area. What about you, Ian?
Yeah, I was gonna say I live around 1, 2, maybe 3% at most. I find it's like just a little bit goes a long way. You really don't need to like scale it down too far. Especially like my raptor had like little teeth and little things, so that's why I was pushing my keep details a little bit more. But yeah, I find I don't have to take that slider too far up.
Yeah, and then Karan, you're asking about multiple subtools. We already showed that. So if you want to rewatch this video, Ian showed it with the Transpose Master. It'll work with Transpose Master, no problem. Okay, so what I'm showing is layers. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to make a layer first. You want to be in record mode. So now that I have a layer in record mode, now I'm just going to click on Proxy Pose. I've got the number that I want. And so if I want to make any movement here, let's go. And I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do masking lasso. And let's just move this part of the arm in here. Okay. And right now I'm in symmetry. We'll reverse that. Now you got to decide, are you old school like me? Do you want to use the transpose line to do movements, or do you want to use that gizmo? Which way do you want to go about it? I like using the transpose line for posing things like this. If I'm going this route where I'm not going to use a rig, I kind of like to treat this as like a bone structure, and then switching to rotations, and then now just start moving that. And I like doing this so you can get these kind of rotations nicely.
Oh yeah.
Right. So if you move that, so now you can get a little turning over like we would in real life, something like that, right? And then continue maybe moving that. Yes, give me, feed me. Okay, so now we've got some simple movements there. And then now I'm going to come out of Proxy Pose, right? And then that detail from the Proxy Pose change is now going to be on this layer. So now if I turn my record layer off, okay, and we turn this on and off, you'll see the arms now go up and down. And again, this is on now the 8 million, well, not 8, 7.6 million mesh, right?
He needs dumbbells. We got to get him
some
dumbbells. He needs dumbbells. We got to get him to work out.
Right. So then let's do a couple more layers here. Again, layer first at the level, obviously, where you'd want things to happen. Layers in ZBrush, they need to be created at the highest subdivision level. So you'd be at the highest level when you do this. We go to Proxy Pose, and now we start making some changes. Okay, so I'm going to say, let's go. And here's something that I like to do. So if you're going to the side here, right? Obviously, doing a quick mask like that is pretty simple. Okay, but then this right in here can sometimes be difficult to, hey, this ear is pretty close to the shoulder, right? So there's something that is near and dear for me that I use a ton, especially if I'm doing hard surface stuff, but I also organic stuff I do a lot of. I like to obviously do some visual this way, and then I like to grow out my selection. It's just, and then I can really see and then shrink it back if I want to. I can see what I'm getting and what I'm not getting in that selection, and then now I can mask out, right? And so now those ears, as you can see, are what's unmasked. Okay, so again, let's do that again, right? So I can even do a combination of having already a mask on here, okay, and then like, hey, I want to get those portions of the ear, right? I can just only show this part of the ear, start growing that out, and you can see I'm growing the selection. And because I'm in a proxy mesh, it's a lower version of the polygons, right? So it's faster growing easily for me. And now I can mask this portion out that I didn't get, and then bring everything back and then flip it. Okay, so these are just workflow things that me personally, I prefer to do. Now I'm going to show the way of using the gizmo to do a little something posed, right? So I'm going to center that so it's centered in his face. Whoa, I want to move it down in here, you know, maybe a little movement right in there. And then now we just start throwing in, you can change size. I don't want to change the size. Let's make his head just tilt a little bit. He's looking down. He's looking down there, right? Clear your mask, come out of proxy pose. Okay. Let that give me my result again with all the details coming back. Boom, there's all my details back. That's now on a layer. Okay, so if I turn the layer off, it goes back. His head's back to where it needs to be. Okay, and so now I have a layer that's raising the arms, lowering the arms. I got a layer that's moving his head. There's a lot of things now that I have going on here. Hey,
Paul, do you want to give him that hockey shortcut for growing?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to do one better. I'm not going to also give, not only am I going to give you the hockey, I'm going to show you where it lives in the UI. So it lives in the tool visibility. So this is only going to become available to you when you have a portion showing and a portion hidden. Okay, so now that you have this, you have a grow, which is Control-Shift-X. The easiest way to remember this for you all is anything that involves selection in ZBrush is always using Control-Shift, right? So Control-Shift, and now you just have to remember X for expand. I would go that way. So the grow is expanding, expand your selection. And then next to it is the shrink, and you can see Control-Shift-S as in shrink. But I'm also a big fan of grow all, Control-Shift-A, and then grow to polygroups is something we added a couple versions ago. That's just a massive one for me, especially when I'm doing hard surface stuff with multiple pieces of topology with the same polygroup. That one's a big one for me. So that's where it lives in the UI. All these have your shortcuts. So this is Control-Shift-A, this is Control-Shift-Q, Control-Shift-X, and Control-Shift-S. So there's where they live. Okay, that's super important. Let's do a little bit more tweaks to him. Hey, let's go ahead and make another layer. And if I was doing this for real, you guys should be naming your layers. Okay, I know we all do. I'm sure, just like subtools. They're all PM 3D underscore 96 vector 9ers, like we're on walkie talkies. No one's naming anything anymore. We got to be naming stuff, people. Got to be naming stuff.
I preach it from the rooftop, but you know,
yeah,
you have to.
You got it, because especially if you're going to start doing more stuff, you want to be able to know what you're doing. So again, taking advantage of this growing ability right through here. Okay, and then I can mask that, inverse it, blur it a little bit. Let's make his ears have some movement now. Just to, you know, he's got to have some ear movement. We'll reset that. We'll put that in symmetry mode and just give his ears a little bit of wah, wah, wah. You got to give him sad ears, maybe, right? When he says no. Actually, Gizmo would be more the sad ears. These guys are more angry, right? So somebody was asking. So through here, this proxy mesh, even if in here you want to keep tweaking this, you can smooth this stuff out in here if you wanted to. You can, like Ian said, you can switch to a move brush, make some other changes, some subtle movement changes. You don't have to just use the gizmo. You don't have to just use the transpose. It's whatever you'd want to use to get that particular pose where you want to have it. Okay. And so now that I'm done this, once again, we unproxy this. We're going to send this now to the higher version of that, and then this layer, right? So now I would say I am going to name these. So this is ears, okay? And then this one was the head. So I'm going to call this head. And there's a reason why I'm going to name this, and this is why I was making that joke, is what we're about to do next is why I'm naming these, and arms. Okay, so I started this part with showing you guys a little video. Again, we're trying to get to, let's play that video again. We're trying to get to this where you see I had like breathing happening too in him. So this is just kind of using Proxy Pose more for just bringing something to life as well. It's not all about just posing here. Okay, and then got some simple head movement, some really just subtle stuff. Oh, his ears perked up.
Yep.
His ears look like my dog. I have a dog that she has gigantic ears. In fact, now that I think about it, we should have called her Gizmo. Because her
There you
ears
go.
are gigantic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate, I love what you're doing with this too, because again, it just shows another way of utilizing this tool. And like you said, bringing characters to life, that's a huge thing, you know, especially as somebody who loves to create characters like myself. So I love that we showcase this as well, especially on something that's almost 8 million.
Yeah.
That's dense.
Gizmo is a good dog name. If I ever have another dog, I gotta shelf that one. I gotta shelf that one. Okay. All right. So now I want to use timeline. And that's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to send my layer information to the timeline. And as you cycle through the timeline, all that movement's going to happen for us. Okay. So in the movie palette, there is a timeline feature here. And this is old. This is like version 4, maybe 4 or 2. If I remember right. I want to say it was 4. It might be 4 or 2. So you just turn it on and off right here. Okay. If you want to remember what everything does, because I'm going to use shortcuts, I want to highlight this beautiful image and all this text here for you for information. Yeah. So I'm just holding the control key. So when we rolled this out, we made this image to try and highlight the things that you can do in the timeline, and all the shortcuts are right here for you in timeline. I know the shortcuts, so I'm just going to use them. That's why I want to highlight this for you, because knowing the shortcuts makes my workflow faster. Okay. So I'm going to come back here to the beginning. All right. And when I click, you're going to see there are dots that are available here. And you can see the track is camera. Okay, so in essence, this is the camera track that I'm doing, that I'm on right now. So ZBrush can only show one at a time. It only can show one portion at a time here. All right, so I'm going to say, all right, let's get rid of this dot, get rid of this dot. Okay, and I'm going to start, let's start here like this. I'm going to make just a dot there. And then I'm going to bring him in slowly because we got some head movements. So I'm going to bring him in slowly and then maybe have him turn. And then I know his head's going this direction. So I'm going to just have him turn there and we'll make another dot here. So now I have this action happening within the camera. All right. And so what I would like to do is make the arms, you know, move in this part of that camera movement. And then from here, I want to start doing the head movements. All right. So then all I got to do, this is why, again, I was naming them. And I named it, this is camera. So then I would say, okay, I want arm movement. So I'm going to click on arms. So we're going to put the arm at 0. We're going to make a dot here. And now you can see the layer says layer 0, 0. And it says arms right here. Okay, so 0, 0, 0, arms. This is why I'm labeling them. I know it's arms. Then I want the arms to go all the way up. And I'm going to put them there. Okay, so now if I bounce between the two, so now there is another layer, another timeline with this on. Okay, and let me move this around. Okay, and I'm going to say this gray dot is in essence the arm movement. So you can see as now I'm moving, the gray dot is the layer and these orange dots are now the camera. Okay, so as I go through this process, all right, I'm going to switch now between certain layers. So now here's my arm layer again. You can see the 2 dots. Then I'm going to say, okay, the head, let's put the head at 0. Okay, and then this is where I want the head to start moving. And then we're going to put the head at 1, and I'm going to have the head go to there. Let's also have the ears do a movement now. So I'm going to say, let's put the ears at 0. Okay, and then I'm going to click in here, and then we'll put the ears at their full movement, and we'll go here. Right, so now I can cycle through, and all this is happening for me now. So I got arms, head, and then ear. Knees and toes, knees and toes, knees and toes. Okay, so this is just what, in essence, the process that I did in that video. All right, yeah. So, and you can even render these out. So you can render with Redshift. You can render with BPR if you want to. You can do old school Play Blast, okay, stuff with this. So in the movie palette, right now I have the movie that I was showing you guys. I would delete it. And now I say I want just the document available to me. And then I want the full size of the document, which my document size, if I remember right, is 1920 by 1080. All right. And then now I'm going to just say, I want a new movie. So in order to do this with the timeline, I'm going to hold down Control Shift, and then I tap on this, and then it's going to go through every dot that's available. And there's an old dot there, and now it's going through and creating that movie for me. And at any point in time, I want to stop the movie. I hit the escape key. This is now going to get sent to the movie palette, and then we can play the movie.
Yep.
Okay, so this is, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I'm going to cut you off just real quick, just because just wanted to reiterate for the chat, for those who are asking. So what we're trying to do is show you a lot of context on how you can utilize the new feature Proxy Pose in conjunction with other things that have been in ZBrush already. Some of you are asking if the timeline animation with layers is been there. It's been there for a while, yes. But now you can take those heavy, dense meshes that maybe you were having troubles working with, or didn't want to ZBrush down or try to optimize. Now with Proxy Mesh, you can go and take those files and you can manipulate them a lot easier. So making this process is a lot smoother now. So we're just trying to give you some context and show you how we've been utilizing it. Hopefully spark some ideas out there, because we know once you get this, you're going to go ahead and run wild with it. So these are just some of the ideas that we've had since we've been playing with it.
Yeah, and I like what Quincy just said. Yeah, your entire creature portfolio can come to life. This is kind of, for me, what Timeline's always been. It's always been, let's put a little life, like making the character breathe a little bit, right? So now, just like Ian said, this is super dense, right? And I don't have subdivision in this scenario. And so instead of retopologizing, doing projections, doing all that work, I can now just say, how about I want them to breathe, make a layer, proxy pose it, okay? Get me that lower version. Okay, now switch to the move brush, maybe, right? And then I'll go pretty big with this. And then start, just make that chest pump out a little bit in here, right? You probably have a little bit of arm movement this way, have a little bit coming out that way. Just a nice little movement. If he's taking a breath, I probably want his throat to also expand a little bit. And it's not something too crazy. And then the best part is this is on a layer. Then maybe have it move up a little bit. And I'm only dealing with 28,000 polygons instead of 8 million. It's a lot easier to pose, right? We can do crazy, which I don't want to do crazy like that, right? But that's just highlighting how easy it is for manipulation now. And so now I come out of Proxy Pose, and now I'm going to get back all my details. And again, not only am I going to get back those details, I've now just put that breathing on a layer. So if we get close to his chest here, all right, and that area I was working at, now I can make it like he's breathing. And then, of course, I would add that now to my timeline, right? And you can go negative to be real. Like now he's breathing inward. Okay. So like Ian said, we're just trying to show ways that you guys can really think about this and use this and utilizing this. And again, Proxy Pose is going to work with layers. Proxy Pose is going to work with Transpose Master. It's going to work with single meshes. It's going to work in any arbitrary mesh. It's going to work with subdivision levels. The mesh can be Dyameshed, it can be Sculptris Pro. The workflow is really opening up for us with this feature, I think, a lot. So there you go. That's how I started playing with it as well, and using it to do things with the Proxy Pose too.
All right.
Right.
Well, that's not all though, right? It's not just Proxy Pose.
No, we got more. I'm going to load another project here because I want to show you guys something else that we've got. We've got more. Don't worry, we've got more. It's not just all about Proxy Pose.
No,
but
I'm
hoping that you guys are all excited just about even looking at the Proxy Pose. So let me load something else here. I'm going to load a new project. Okay. Bye-bye, Gremlin. And by the way, that Gremlin's all poly painted inside of ZBrush. That's a complete 100% poly paint. And so is this one as well. Okay. So moving from organic to hard surface here. This next feature, you can use it organically or hard surface. I'm going to just start with hard surface so you guys can get the idea. You guys that know me, this is starting to go on my heartstrings as well, hard surface. So this is a ship I did all in ZBrush as well. So let's take a look at, say, this piece of geometry here. Okay, so I'm just going to solo out so you can see what we have here. So this is a mesh, all right, that is sitting at 69,000 polygons. This does have subdivision levels. Okay, so when I start doing things, especially when we're talking about details and things like that, this becomes important. I need to have subdivision levels. Okay, I got to have this. If I want to start putting some really nice details on this, we got to up-res, 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 up-res. Okay, so this is now kind of a little bit of the opposite of what we were talking with Proxy Pose, where we had a super high-res stuff, and then we need to get low and be able to make big changes, and then have that populate back up to the high-res. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the subdivision levels. I'm going to delete them. So I'm back down to just the 69,000. So you guys can see what's going to happen here. All right. I'm going to have, and again, show you quickly the poly frame of this here. We'll turn everything on so it see how it works in conjunction with my ship. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my document palette over here. And we've got a new feature called Drop 3D. All right. So this is going to pull on that original 2.5D of ZBrush. And there's some really fun things that we can do here that I really want to highlight. Also unique things that you can do with this workflow that you just cannot do in the 3D workflow as well. So I'm going to drop this down. This is now in 2.5D mode. So now we're back to using these 2.5D brushes, but there are some really big advantages here that I want to highlight again, because some of you may have not used these brushes in a long time. So this feature, I think, is going to make you want to go back and use these features. So I'm going to go single layer brush. I'm going to say line. I'm going to grab an alpha like this. Okay. And then I'm going to change my spacing as well on this. I'll go all the way on that. Let's go with something a little bit this big. All right. And I'm just going to draw out a line. And then now I have, say, something like this. Okay. Now that I have this, not only can I just draw out this line and have that, but I can also switch to the move mode, and I can freely move this wherever else I want it to go, right? This is something we can't do in 3D. We can't make the stroke and then just freely move it wherever we want, even after we've drawn the stroke. Not only that, I can also decide maybe I want to rotate it. Maybe I want to have it that. Maybe I want to scale it. I don't like how big it is. I want to go maybe a little bit smaller like this, right? And then maybe I even want to say, okay, not only do I want one, I want two, you know, and I want another one. All right. And this one, actually, I want to turn into a subtract. So now that's a subtract. And then now maybe let's go back to rotating, bringing this maybe be the other direction, going back into a scale. And I'm going to scale that one up. So with one stroke, I changed size, I made rotations, I made movements, I made copies, I made larger ones, right? And then so now what's happening? If you remember, we started with a mesh that's only 69,000 polygons, right? So now we have two sliders here. There is a sub-pick size slider and there's an optimized slider, right? So I'm going to just start, I'm going to knock this down to like, let's do half for now, 1.5. I'm going to pick it up now. And then there you go. You see there's a mask applied. And you see also my camouflage is gone. I want to highlight this as well. Right now, not only am I sitting at the lower polygon count, I'm also using surface noise without even it being applied right now to my mesh. So if I clear my mask, you can see that camouflage is back, because that's actually where I'm getting my camouflage from. I'm getting it from the surface noise. So if I turn this off, you see that it's just a solid color that I found that I wanted. And then now I got my surface noise. And then you can see I didn't lose any details in those strokes. So this is on something that was 69,000, but you can see now that almost doubled a little bit. But what's happening here is if we turn on our poly frame, we are giving you density only where you made the strokes. Okay, so you can see here, only the density is happening right through here. And in those strokes, nothing else is being touched. This is the difference here. This is where for me, a hard surface person, I start having ideas and things that I want to do. All right. So even to the point of, let's pull back a little bit on that. Right. And let's go ahead and grab something else. Let's grab the one here below it. We'll turn that on, turn this one on. Okay. And then here's something, look how low this is. Right. So this isn't even 1,000 polygons. It's only 716 polygons right now. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's drop this now. I'm going to drop that. And let's just, same kind of stroke for just to get your general ideas. I'm going to show some other things in here. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to undo that. Let's go smaller this time. And let's go from there and then make it actually come in here. Got all the same depth as well. So I don't have to worry about the depth. coming through here, make it maybe link up into there. Let's go now with a little bit smaller brush size, and let's turn it to Z add this time. I'm going to draw that out, and then I'm going to put another one here at an angle, another little one right here so far, and then let's pick that up and see what happens. So we pick that up. Look, the detail did not change. I still have that same stroke quality that I had when I dropped it. And now let's look at the polyframe. And you can see even with something as low as this, I don't have any limitation here. It's all about this feature going, oh, I see you've made a lot of strokes, a lot of changes in this area. We're going to up-res this area for you and make that work. Okay, so I want to show some other things here that we can do that can be quite fun and a lot of different ways of working in this mode. All right, so I'm going to go undo. All right, and we'll stay. You know what? We'll go up just so we get ranges here. Let's divide and delete so that we got something like this. So there's different ranges of topology that we have in different areas. Okay, so this is not like local dividing or local. This is not like local subdivisions that you can do in ZBrush. This is very different. Okay, this is taking advantage of Sculptris Pro. Okay, and also in a minute here, I'm going to show you how it also takes advantage of Proxy Pose. So we're taking advantage of features inside of ZBrush to allow you to have more controls here and do more. All right, so I'm going to drop down my surface. This time, instead of clicking this, I'm going to click a piece of geometry, and I'm going to say, let's add a piece of geometry now. So now I have this. So we can move this around, right? I can even move it anywhere that I want, size it down, size it up, right? I have the ability to move that wherever I want. Okay, so this is a different piece of topology now.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That's what I'm using here to start pulling on things and then moving that where I want. Maybe I want to say, okay, that's pretty good. Let's put another one there. And let's start moving that around through there. And now I'm going to say, let's grab this one and let's use a line. And in fact, let's use line 2 with no alpha. And this time, let's try maybe something like this that is drawing out multiple pieces at once. Okay, so I don't like the spacing that's in here. So I want a bigger gap between these. So I'm going to make a larger gap between those. And I don't need any color, so we're just going to draw these out. Do say something like that. And then now maybe do another one there. Let's go larger. And then make a couple bigger ones through there. And then pick those up. Okay, so this was using different pieces of topology. And then now that is actually being applied to the surface. Again, if I show you the wireframe, you'll see what we're doing. Okay, and so now let's try something else that is also taking advantage of some other features that we have here. All right, so I'm going to, let's say, let's work on a different area here of this. Let's stay here. I'm going to drop this. Let's go back. I really like using this. Let's say I'm going to make a stroke here, right? And then I'm going to make another stroke here. And I'm using the shift key. Then I'm going to come up to the stroke palette. I'm going to say the number of strokes. Let's make it 6. And let's interpolate. And so I can even interpolate these strokes. So I can use an interpolate option that's there and have the first stroke and second stroke be seen and interpolate that and then pick that back up. And then, of course, all those details are going to be added to your surface and you're ready to go. Okay. So you can move strokes. You can have interpolation strokes. There's a lot of things also we're going to be able to do. So let's grab a different model and let's look at it different. Let's take something that's inside of ZBrush here so you all can also play with this. Let's take the frog. Okay. So this is more organic look. Okay. In here. And now I want to start doing some nice changes to this frog. You can see this is, I believe if I remember, a Dyameshed. All right, so here's a Dyameshed version of this is what this was. Let's look at the topology. Yep, the Dyameshed. So I'm going to drop this now, and I'm going to stick with the simple brush. Let's do a spray, And let's even grab something a little more different in the spray. We'll go a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to start spraying this. Okay. And start having things like that. Then let's drop some intensity on that, and even just less intense. Just start playing with that. And then if I hold the Alt key, that's going to push in there as well. So I'm getting all this details through there. Okay. So I can also then say, let's move on and try a different brush. How about the clone brush? Right. So I'm going to say in the picker, I'm going to say, let's dynamically clone this through here. So I'm going to say, let's hold the control key, tap in here, coming over in here, and you can see I can start adding and copying from other portions in here as well. Okay, so control key, and then just start dragging this. And if I want to, again, if I want to undo, I can go undo and say, you know what, the intensity is a little too much for me. I'm going to turn off RGB. We don't need any RGB. And then just slowly start copying parts of this model where I want it to go. Okay, and then this is more using it in a nice 2.5D approach. And then I'm going to pick that up. And then you can see the details didn't change at all. And then we'll turn on polyframe, and you can see what happens. We are putting all the res in the area that it needs to be from where these details are coming from. Right? So this is using Sculptris Pro's ability and idea to give us the Tesla. But if you look, it's giving us really nice topology. And only at the areas here is where it really gets most of your triangulation. So within the area here, we're going to do our best to give you as clean quad mesh as possible. There will be triangles throughout here, but you can see how much more clean you're getting through here. So you can see in here, there's some triangles through here. So with that said, let me undo this. Okay, we're going to go back. Let's drop this again, right? And let's go ahead and let's go back to that simple brush and do something like this. You know, there's a lot of fun you can have with some of these brushes. The old fiber mesh brush, that's a little aggressive. I think it's a little aggressive for him. Just doing some fiber meshing. You got smudges, you got paint, and this all will work with paint. It'll work with geometry. It'll work with whatever you want. Okay, so like I could grab a sphere even and then just draw out the sphere in here, and then I can move the sphere in space. So this is moving. I'm just clicking and then moving it so I can have it sit further in, out. And the one thing that I want to highlight here is when I'm pulling down, the sphere is moving further away from the frog. When I'm pushing up, right, it's going into the dog. So it's being moved. I'm the dog. I'm so used to using the dog. Moving closer to the frog. So when you have a shadow, this is camera dependent. So there's going to be a projection that's happening. Okay. So if I just want some more like something like that, where I just want some details, and then now, you know, continue drawing out different types of spheres, different size spheres in a different area throughout here. Okay. And then even switching to an Alt key and then having something like this. Okay. And then don't forget, we can use any piece of geometry. So I can pre-make this stuff if I wanted to. Now, I said that we had the ability to use Sculptris Pro with this on top of using Proxy Mesh. So that's what this optimize slider is. So this optimize slider, if I want to knock this down, we'll put this, you know, I'll put it at 2. We'll just start at 2. All right. Then I'm going to pick this up, and then there's our details. Right. Once again, I've maintained the details, but here's the difference. Okay. I'm going to clear the mask, is the topology. So this is, I'm going to get in close to this, and you can see it's a lot more triangulation happening as we go through here. Okay, here, let me turn off the color so you guys can see it better, and let's make it brighter.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, I would say too, this is really good for like when you're building environment pieces, when you're trying to add in more detail and design to your piece. But like Paul is saying too, you know, it's like it's really triangulating and the mesh is changing. I also want to throw in it works with adjust last. Also helps too. Like if you want to make a slight change after you pick it back up, that's helpful.
Right. So here is, well, I did so many. We have to go backwards. Here's what I'd want to do. Okay, is show you now that we've picked this up. Okay, there is the version before. Right, and you can see this is all just quadded now. There's no triangles in there. Okay. And when we picked up, it was all triangles. So here, we'll go back and do another little area here. So you guys can really make sure you wrap your heads around this. I'm going to drop this. Let's go ahead and let's use those shapes again. That was actually, I was liking what we were getting there. And then let's just do something like this. Again, just add some crazy nice little details through here. And we'll throw some parts in. And don't forget, the beauty of this, I can switch to spray, Z sub, and I can even just spray details like this.
Spray.
Hold the Alt key and then get the opposite, right? So you can switch between Z add, Z sub. Like, and this is using the piece of geometry now to spray everywhere, right? So it's we'll get rid of the spray off here. So we have just differences here. Okay. And so with the optimize, again, if I pick up, right, we're going to look at the topology. You can see here, I'll clear the mask. See the paint's coming through as well, but you can see how decimated it is. Okay. And if we go back, there's with no optimization, there's with optimization. So when you turn on the optimize slider, we give you both. So you as an artist can even decide, do I prefer the one optimized or do I prefer the one not optimized? So it really opens up the ability for us to experiment and try different things out. Okay. So this one's at 586. Okay. And then this one's at 412. Okay. And then obviously for me, I do want to be okay. I would want to see if I'm seeing any difference. Right? That's what I'd be looking for. 512. And there's no difference. So if we hide the mask, there's no difference. The only thing that's changing is the mask points. So for me, it would make maybe more sense to stick with the 412. So that's what the optimize is going to do. And you can see this isn't just about using it for sculpting too. You can use it for paint. So if we drop this, let's go up in here. Let's fill him with some color. Let's give him some kind of nice little green in here so we have something to visually see. Okay. I'm going to drop this and then I'm going to switch to the paint brush. Okay. And then now we have this paintbrush and I'm going to select a color. Let's go red. I'm not going to do any add. I'm going to do only RGB. And again, I'm going to go actually pretty small with my brush stroke. And let's make some really even smaller strokes, right? So we can see how clean my stroke is, right, through here. And again, I love using color spray. Just get variations like kind of like this. Just play with your intensity, slightly build in some stuff, switching to other colors, lightly build up on color, and then building up upon this, right? So now I've painted in these areas, and then I'm not going to do any optimization just so we can see what we're going to get. And then I'm going to pick that up, and you can see my quality of my strokes did not change. This is really what this feature is about. It's about, okay, I want to start adding some details, but I don't want to have to subdivide up the entire mesh. I don't want to have to go and do a Z-remesher and then do projections and everything else like that. I just need details. So think about any kind of meshes, arbitrary meshes, scan data, Dyameshed, sculptures, any types of meshes. This workflow is going to work, and you can see what we've done here for topology wise. All right, but there's more that I'm going to kick at the Ian, and he's going to show you guys some other things that you're going to be able to do with this.
All right. Well, thanks, Paul. Yep, 2.5 coming in hot, which is always super awesome. Well, speaking of some older features, I actually have a goodie that I've been using a lot. I've been using a lot lately with the new additions, but it's something I've used quite often, especially for like, texturing or painting with my characters. I do have a hard surface piece here just to kind of showcase it just a little bit, but we're going to bring up stencils. So I'm actually going to come up here to the stencil menu, and I'm just going to go ahead and dock this on the right-hand side. So before, if you wanted to have a stencil, what you would do is you would select an alpha that you really liked. Let's say something like this alpha 53. Then you would come up to your alpha, and then from there you would come down to transfer, and then you would say make stencil. And you also too, you could invert your alpha, say make stencil, hover over that stencil, with it, press and hold the space bar, and then you can kind of bring this up, and then you can position this where you want. Say, you know what, I actually want this to be right here, right? And then from there, it's actually, zoom in a little bit just so you can see it. Scale it up just a bit, come in there. And now you can just come through and start like painting and stuff like that, right? Now I also have let me grab a different paintbrush, maybe choose a different color, etc. So this would be the way to actually have that stencil. But let's say I don't want to do it that way. Now I want to utilize, let's clear that. Now I just want to utilize an alpha or an IMM brush here. So actually, I'm going to come up here to this alpha, and I'm going to grab this kind of leathery skin, which doesn't make sense for this character. So actually, let's kick back to my raptor here, just because that makes more sense. And so from here now, I can come up to stencil, and I can say from alpha, and I can pick that new leathery texture. Now I can scale this up. And also now I can just come, I mean, you could do this before, but I can hit wrap mode, and then I can make sure that I push this up, and then I could start painting or sculpting on this area. So if I start painting here, and then I shut off stencil, you can see that it's transferring that alpha. So instead of going through the alpha, make transfers, etc., which, you know, was the way to do it, now you could just come up here to the top and just say, I want to do this from an alpha. And don't forget too, when you come back up here to the light box and you hit the comma key, we have a ton of alphas, from especially hard surface alphas here at the top, that you just need to double click. And then that puts your alpha here, which now makes it selectable. So I can come through and say, that's the alpha that I want. Let's hide this, hover over this little square box, press and hold the space bar, bring this up. And don't forget, you also have the ability to repeat alphas. So I can actually repeat this a bunch of times if I want. And then I can also increase the resolution and then move this around. And you see here, it's actually wrapping over that. So it's a new improvement on the actual stencil set, but it's not just about alphas here. So if I turn this off, you can see, yay, got it. So let me actually come here to this hard surface one, cover on the back. And let's say I want to actually bring in some custom designs. I have a brush I really like, and I want to actually utilize some of that design in my piece. So now I can come from IMM. So let me set this up, turn that button off for a second. I'm going to go ahead and hit B for brush, I for IMM. I'm going to pick the steam gear. And you can see I have all of these, you know, IMM just like normal. So now if I say from IMM, it's going to basically show me which one I have selected. And it's also going to give me all the other IMM brushes. So I don't have to pick the one I have selected, but I can pick any one, say cloth. And now it's going to generate a stencil from that IMM brush. But if I wanted to be very specific, again, notice here I have this IMM brush selected, and I'm going to go ahead and say I want a stencil from this gear 18. I can now go to stencil at the top, say one item, and now I say from IMM, and I pick the brush that I had selected. And now you could see it's pulling from that one IMM brush. So again, if I hover over here, I now can just move this, and wrap mode is still on, of course. So we could turn that off if we wanted to, just to cover the whole area. And then I can come through, scale this down, and then I can start painting. So I'm going to grab like paint, just as an example, come through, start painting that up, get a nice big brush, come through. I think I also have stroke turned on. So let me go ahead and go down to my lazy mouse. I'm just going to turn that off for a second. But you can start seeing that that's transferring over. I'm going to go ahead and just turn this off real quick. So you can see here I have a nice big, that was actually a little too big. Let's turn that back on. Let's scale this back down. Let's go ahead and scale this down just to really showcase that. Control Z. And of course, too, I can just rotate, manipulate around, and start coming through and start painting that out. And then I can adjust. That's too many alpha types. So I'm going to drop that back down and come through and start painting. So it's a really cool new addition to the actual stencil. And so again, you know, utilizing this is a nice way to actually come through and make changes to my model, to add some details, whether it be painting or whether it be sculpting. So again, you know, coming through here, I really like that leathery skin, and I really want to repeat that a few times. I'm going to scale this up. This works really, really well, of course, if you have a repeating texture, which this one wasn't. So maybe I'll go ahead and just start painting that on. Now, what's also really cool is in conjunction to just using a stencil to paint stuff is that some of the newer features that we've put in the past, let's say like thick skin, maybe I don't want that stencil to cut too deep and I want to have some control over that. So I've been utilizing it with thick skin to come through and say, yeah, let me give me a little bit of thickness there, And then I'm going to go ahead and start cutting into that area. Now, this might be a little hard to see, so let me turn off the stencil. You can see it's starting to cut in a little bit. And then it's capping, so I'm pushing it too far. So I would control that, maybe kick that in a little bit more, say something like that. Turn that stencil back on. Let's put wrap mode on, scale it up. And now I could come through and start painting. There you go. You could start seeing how that's looking. So again, it's just another way to utilize the feature within context. And so it's just some really nice improvements to a feature that has been in ZBrush for quite some time. When did Stencil come out? Paul? Pop quiz.
When did Stencil come out?
Yeah.
Oh my, yeah, you're going back in the like 1.5, like 2, like it's been there for a long time.
Yeah. So that's stencils, and it's really fun. Again, so you can either bring in custom alphas, you can use now custom IMM brushes, and you can come through and you can be very selective with exactly how you want to do that. So really fun way to go about doing that.
While you're getting ready, there's a question about the ZBrush does not use the video card at all unless you're rendering with Redshift and you have that, or polygroup it and also bevel it are the only items that use video cards. Otherwise, there's no video card being used inside of ZBrush. So it's all processor and RAM based.
Yep, absolutely. I do see the question under that with how do I open the stencil menu. I'll just run through it one more time. So the original way of doing it would be going to first select an alpha that you like. So say something like this alpha 4, coming up to alpha, coming down to transfer, and then saying make stencil. That makes a stencil from there. But now, instead of going to the alpha menu itself, you can actually just come straight up to stencil at the top and say from alpha, and that allows you to pick an alpha that you already have or one you've loaded, or you can even import if you have one to import. Once you have that selected and you say from alpha, it automatically makes that for you. And you can see here now I can paint on there or sculpt on there, move it around, and you can actually see that that's transferring. And the same thing from an IMM brush. You can either say one item, which again, bring that down. One item will pick one of the brush that you had selected from your IMM brush. So if you want a very specific one, go ahead and pick an IMM brush that you want. So BI, and then let's just say, yeah, I'll go back to the steam gear. That seems to be my favorite for the day. Click the cover one, and then I would say stencil from IMM and pick that actual IMM, and that gives me the 1. Now, of course, it comes in a little bit large, so we could drop that down. And then I'll pick, a painting brush, and then holding the space bar in the middle of the square, or just pretty much anywhere while the stencil is activated, allows you to select these options like move. You can move and rotate. You can just rotate, or you can scale it up and down. And then from there, you can just start painting on top of it. And then to close that off, just go ahead and just come up to stencil and just say stencil off. You can also invert the stencil if you would like. So if you don't like the current stencil that's given, just go ahead and click the invert button, and then you can go ahead and paint on top of that. So now it's being more of like a mask at that point. Turn that off, and you can see here protected just that part of the inside, and everything else I was able to paint on. So again, just coming up and hitting invert for that. Now he's kind of red with a circle.
Perfect.
Very, very cool. So a little bit of context for that. Another feature, so I'm going to jump into a new feature that we've also added, which is a lot of fun. It's both with materials and lights. Is now, if we come up to lights, we have an undo and a redo button. And these are really cool, especially when you're trying to light a scene and you're trying to be a little, if you're like me and you're a little indecisive, you come in through here, and now I want, let's say, like a rim lights. So I'm going to start intensifying that up a little bit. And then I now add a secondary light. So I pick this one, add this light here, but I'm not liking what I have. I can select that light and I can start undoing the lights and stepping it back and saying like, yeah, I need to back this lighting up because I don't like the way it was. Or I was showcasing like before and after. This is how strong the rim was. This is how it was a little bit less. So just a little something to help with convenience along the way, which I find to be very useful, especially when you're trying to figure out, is that too strong? Is that too light? I don't like that. I do like that. Gives you just a little bit more freedom to play instead of having to remember the exact settings that you were on. So it's a really neat feature to come through. And as you can see here, as I turn this light off, and turn it back on. What do I like about that? Rotate this around. Really just helps me have a little bit more control of the environment as I'm trying to be decisive on what it is I want to see. And the exact same thing is now been applied with material. So if I go up to material, now what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to come through and let's turn my light back on so I can see my materials. So I'm just going to go ahead and maybe pick like a basic basic redshift material, and we'll even turn redshift on for this. So there we go. Now, of course, right now I have a basic skin shade 4 material on. So let me go to subtool. Let me just go ahead and turn off my materials. And now we have something like this. So what I want to do from here is I want to go under modifiers. So material modifiers. If we look under the material, just under our basic materials, we have show used and copy. And now I have undo, redo, and of course, paste material. Those are grayed out. So as I'm coming through here and I'm trying to decide if I want like maybe my diffuse to be a little less, rough, or I want to be able to maybe adjust some of the refract samples, or I want to come through and adjust maybe the subsurface scatter. Once I go ahead and make that adjustment to that material, you're going to see now that it's going to have the ability to undo that. So as I'm making these changes, I could say, I don't really like that, or what, okay, I see the difference now, and I do like that, so let me go ahead and redo that. So, and this works with all materials, not just redshift materials. I can come through here under a basic material, and then I could say, you know what, I want to change my basic material, so I want to actually push the color bump, and I want to push the ambient, and then I said, no, that doesn't look really good. And then maybe drop the diffuse. Again, just little things that help you just create a little bit more with ease. So you can see the drastic difference just between. So if you're building any of the materials that you like, and as you're building them, there's things that you don't like, or you're trying to figure it out, these are just little features that kind of help you along the way and really just speeds up the time and effort of, was that at 21 or was that at 8? I can't remember. Maybe it was at 10. So if you're like me, and which happens a lot, so there you go, a little fun fact. This has just been a lifesaver in trying to figure that out. So coming through, now I have this kind of like dark skin material. It's getting ridiculous. So I'm going to go ahead and start backing that up. So little fun things, just something that's just really like a time saver for me. And
nice.
Now,
yep.
Mr. Paul.
My turn. I want to take it back. I'm taking it back.
Take it back?
Yep. I'm taking it back. I'm taking it back. Okay. A couple more items that we want to show you to and make sure you're aware of for this version. The first thing is a Mac specific item that was brought up to us by several people, especially if you have a silicone machine, either that M1 or M2. The text that is in ZBrush, you had all that have that system and maybe have the monitors wanted to be able to adjust your text. So now in the interface UI, there is a actual curve here so you can adjust your text. We have re-looked at this and made it match to the older one, but for those Mac users like me right now, I want to make sure you're aware of this. So you can actually adjust your text, and you can say, I can make it more bold, or I don't know why I would ever do this, but get rid of it. But you can make it more bold. But the default should be where you would want it to be from the previous versions before version 2023, which is working with the silicone processors. The other thing that is something very important for myself as an artist that has 4 3D printers, I'm always printing things out. So obviously scaling is important for me and understanding that, right? So I'm just going to dock our plugin here, and I'm going to go to Scale Master. Right. So let's say I wanted to print this out. And here's something that I usually do. Like, you might go, okay, I want this whole statue to be 10 inches tall, 8 inches tall, 3 inches tall, so forth and so on. For me, I'm going to take them out of perspective just so we can look in orthographic and really look straight at this. For me, the best way to do this, I'm going to give you that workflow. I'm going to show you something that we're doing also with projects with this. So I'm going to first set my scene scale. So this particular subtool that's selected has a size. There is a size there. ZBrush measurement default is millimeters. That's why there's only one number here in millimeters, right? But that size is 1.4 to 0.47. There is nothing in the extension that says, is this in what world? That's why in a lot of our other programs and all programs, we got to go select what world we want to be in. So let's just say I'm going to be in inches. Okay, so this is actually inches scale. So something that I like to do then is I like to make a new bounding box subtool. And I want this to create, as you can see, we'll back up and then we'll turn on transparency. This creates, we'll turn off ghost, a box that's exactly the size of all my subtools in this scene, from the front to the back, from bottom to top, and then the width as well, everything. Like, so she's going from her kneecap to the back of the stand here, right? So this is important to me. So now if I come in here, all right, and I say sliders to subtool, okay, this is giving me the size of this box. So for example, I say, okay, 2 inches, it's going to be pretty tiny. I want to go to a little bit bigger. So I'm going to say, I'm going to go 8 inches and I'm going to hit the enter key. Because I have this little R on in this plugin, the other 2 sliders automatically update for me. And now I want to reset the subtool, but not just the one subtool. I want to do all the subtools. So then when I hit this resize subtool, this plugin, as you can see, is resizing everything for me. And then there you go. And then now this is 8 inches tall, ready to get sent out for print. Okay. So what I want to bring up for this is if you go to the transpose line, okay, and we'll turn this on, you can see the bounding box puts an edge specifically in the middle in both horizontal and vertical, right? So I can click on these vertex points and then click on another one, and then that transpose line snaps to things, right? So that means if we go back to the model, let's turn off transparency and let's turn off the box for now on this one. And now if I want to know like the measurement, say from like the neck width, and I'm doing something like this, I can now get a measurement. And where we're going to put that measurement is up here again. Look up here. Lisa needs braces. Lisa needs braces. Lisa needs braces. Top left corner. So that distance that I just drew out is 0.43 inches. So this is now a measuring ruler within inside of ZBrush, and it snaps to vertex points. So I can snap from here to here, and I know that's 1.3323 inches, right? The reason why I'm highlighting this is as a person that maybe I'm going to want to print this and maybe I want to print different levels. What we are doing also with this Scale Master is we are calibrating this transpose line to be also put in this inches. And that's why you can see that's inches here on the top. So this is all being done in the preferences in the transpose units, this unit scale number right here. This number is what's being changed when I did that set scene scale. So what I mean by that is we set scene scale and then I change this now and say, no, it's actually, you know, a different size in the millimeters, right? This slider C changes, right? That plugin automatically makes the slider be correct to whatever world I just put this model in. All right, so here's the thing that we're doing now in this version. If you guys save out a project, not a tool, a project, we are now going to save that slider unit. So as a person that's in product design, you know, we have people who are in aviation, automotive, dental, toy people, collectible people. If you guys now set your scene scales, you have your measurement key that you want, and you save the project, this number will now stay, and then you're in that world. So this is actually something that was requested by the people in those worlds that I just highlighted, that, hey, I want to be able to just stay within that world now and be able to have that the next time I load the project, it's still there. Okay. So that is something else that we've added to this. So I want to also do another little quick, simple highlighting of things that we've been talking about here, because I saw some questions coming through. And part of this, why we do this ourselves, Ian and I and everybody else that's involved in streaming, we want to make sure you all get information, right? Mm-hmm. So we're looking at things like a Proxy Pose, okay? And Ian was showing making ZSpheres and then making movements and things like that. So I want to take a minute again and kind of just do a very fast recap and really look at this again. And specifically, I want to make sure you guys can see how you can even make a ZSphere rig, because I personally, when I'm posing in ZBrush, I prefer to use the ZSphere rig to make really big movements and then use the transpose with masking to make little subtle movements with my fingers, little head movements, things like that. It's just a preferred method for me that I would like to do. So the reason why I also want to highlight this is coming back to transpose master. This is all going to come together for us. Okay. Because in transpose master, you have things like a ZSphere rig that you can turn on. You can even turn on later. Right. So if we go back and look at everything we've talked about in this stream, Transpose Master also has the ability, when you guys are dealing with multiple subtools, sending everything in Transpose Master. And if you have that layer option on, will automatically make a new layer for you on every single subtool. If you guys have that ZSphere rig on, will automatically drop a ZSphere for you. And you can even copy and paste ZSphere rigs with this plugin. So obviously what becomes important is, how do I make a rig? And it's really easy. So I just want to show recap with just this, just giving you the idea here, so you have an understanding of how to do this. Okay, so I'm going to select a ZSphere. This is what we have. And I'm going to come down here into the rigging, and I'm going to say select mesh, and I'm going to grab that character. When in this case, it's that male figure, and now it's sitting here. All right, and then now I'm going to switch between the options up here. All right, and I'm going to switch to scale. Now, here's one big thing I'm going to tell you that's super important is always, 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 Lisa needs braces. Lisa needs braces. Okay, turn on symmetry when you're doing this, right? Yep. Because if you don't have symmetry on, you can move this ZSphere freely when you go to move mode. And you obviously, if you're building a rig, especially for a model like this, that's symmetrical, I'd want him to stay. So what I mean by that, I can see I can only move the ZSphere up and down this vertical line. I cannot move it this direction or that direction because symmetry is on. If I turn symmetry off, then I can move it freely. And that's not what I want to do. Okay, and then I'm going to scale it down and say, this is the root ZSphere. I'm going to turn off the floor. We don't need that. And I'm going to turn off perspective. So this is, and as Ian says, turn off perspective for fun.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to see, you can move it in this area, right? Move it in that area, move it where you want to. Okay. So this is kind of, I like to use this as the pelvic bone, right? And then now you can draw, and then you want to say, okay, I want to add something new. So you can click in here, and this is why I also like to use symmetry. You can see there's 2 red circles to a green circle. I click, and then this is what I get. Okay. So now I can see, start moving things around, and we start positioning things like this. Now, for me, instead of doing that, right, I would prefer to just say, how about I want one there? I want one there. I want something at the wrist. And then I'm going to come all the way to the finger. So you can actually click at a particular vertex point on your mesh, and we will draw a ZSphere, which in a case, it makes it easier for me to build a rig. So you can click in your spots, and you can see now that part of the arm rig is pretty much where I want it to be at the joints. And now switching to move, I just want to move this with inside because it just would make sense to move it inside the body because it's supposed to be a rig, right? So the workflow for me would be, I switch a lot to move, where I select the ZSphere that I want to grow from. Then I switch back to draw, and then I just click on the mesh where I want those ZSpheres to live. Okay, and this is going to be a faster way to start building your rig, in my opinion. Again, I prefer doing it this way, and then you can move things around. Again, I can switch to move. You can go to this angle if you want to, switch to move, back to draw, go to the ankle, right? Come back to the heel, come back out to the foot. And then you can see I'm building this rig. And then you can switch to move if you want to move things around. You can switch to rotate. So coming in here, I would probably want to move this top sphere to be more back there, more in the knee. I would also say I tend to put a little bit of a bend in my rig. So what I mean by that is I don't do stuff like that. I do a little bit something more, like a little bit of a bend in there, and looking at the relationships that we have. And again, I'm just switching between these. And so from here on out, I'm just going to kind of go a little bit quicker for us, just to start thinking about how you all can start using this. Because with Proxy Pose now, just like Ian showed, we can use these rigs. We can make separate poses. You can use another application if you want to make separate poses. But I wanted to take a moment to just show you all how I like to build a rig with inside a ZBrush. I tend to cap my shoulders. What I mean by capping those shoulders, I'll put another one there and there. And then I'll do it on my, also on the elbows. I do it on the hips. So like at the hinge and ball joint movements, I like to put a little caps in there. Okay. And the reason being is when I go to bind now, you guys, if I switch to rotate and now I'm going to come out of symmetry, right? We can start moving things, but see, I can move the chain. And here's the big thing about this. It's about the chain. All right. The chain is what you guys want to move the most, not the ZSphere, the chain. Because you move the ZSphere, we're going to allow it to move. So if I switch to move and I pull on the one by the finger, you see, I'm just stretching the hands. because the Z-spheres also can change form. Like if I want to put a little bit more in his chest, you could actually switch to scale and start scaling up and see his chest scales up. And see, I can scale up each side of his pec area, right? You can use it for this mobility as well. So I prefer to use rotations and do a little bit. And see, this is why I do a cap. I can get some nice little simple movements and then see tweaking. I'm using those caps to tweak those shoulders and just get a better movement in there and coming through here. I would also strongly recommend making like a pretend rib cage. So I'm like, so when I do now, let's do a crazy movement. The reason why, so if we do a rotation, you can see what's happening in the middle. Like he's just, hey. He's just a lot is going on there, right? So you unbind, everything goes back to the default. I'm going to go back to my draw mode. Okay, I'm going to go from there, and then now I'm going to say I'm going to put some kind of rib cage elements in here. So I'm going to go from there, there, and there, and then now I'm going to start moving these to act like a rib cage. Okay, so this is all part of that process. The beauty is, though, once this is built for the character, that's it. I don't have to build it again. If I ever want to use it again, I showed you in Transpose Master, you can actually save this out and copy and paste it. I'll show you that in a second real quick. Okay, so now with this, let's bind again. And now let's do that crazy rotation again from down here from the root. And you can see the movement's a lot better now in the torso. Right, so this is what it's about. It's about a relationship between the Z-spheres. Touch my knees and toes, knees and toes. Obviously, you can go a little crazy with this. And this, for me, is just way faster than sitting and doing masks, right? And then moving things, right? I really like Z-spheres also. The one time I do rotation with the Z-spheres, if I want to kind of open up the hip, like look at that, like nice opening up of the hip in there. So when you start doing like a pose like this, and then now I want to turn the leg, this is a lot easier to do than trying to doing a masking and transpose or gizmoing. Okay, so going back, let's unbind. I'm going to delete the mesh, right? So this is now the rig, okay, that we have. So let's go back to this, and then you guys are used to using something like transpose. So I'm going to turn the layer off. And the minute you click this, okay, you're going to go through the process. Well, I need more subtools. It might help here. Let me add a subtool. Might help if I had subtools.
There you go. Give him a hat.
Give him some hair. There. Give him some hair. Gotta have subtools. It's a necessity. If you're gonna use it. Yes.
It's beautiful.
Perfect.
Ship
Perfect.
it. Ship it.
Okay, so T-pose, and then you see what that did? It dropped a Z-sphere in there. So you remember I already created one. So right, I can store it, okay, and then come back to this and then paste it, right? And then let ZBrush paste in. There you go. So I can save out the rig as a tool. So you guys can make multiple rigs and just save them out. And anytime you can load in a rig and then paste. Another advantage for me, why I prefer using ZSphere rigging. Okay. So again, using all this in conjunction with the things that we now have with Proxy Pose, right? So again, if you want to go to something with multiple subtools, let's load Mr. Demo Soldier. You can now, if we have something that has two dents, for example, we're going to take this guy, we're going to divide him up, right? We've all ran into this, I'm sure. We don't have any subdivision levels, even in this case. I'm going to grab the density here, no projection, and Dyameshed it. So this guy here, right, is way dense. He's too dense to pose. Like an animator is not going to probably animate with something like this. It's too much to sit there and animate with. Right, so think in that context. If I'm an animator, I'm probably going to use a proxy to do things. Okay, so that's where Proxy Mesh can come into play. So this is, again, Ian already showed the workflow of you guys can transpose all this to Transpose Mesh and proxy it. Here's the one where like, okay, everything else has subdivision levels but him. Okay, so I'm going to proxy pose him ahead of time now. So I'm going to say, let's get him down to a more workable level. And again, I'm looking at that top left corner with the percentage. Like Ian and I have discussed, we like to live around that 1%, 2%, 3%. Once you guys get this in your hands, you'll let us know what you're living in. Okay, I'm going to say let go. That's in Proxy Pose. You can still, I'm not going to do the rig. You can now T-pose all of this.
Yeah.
Okay? And what got sent over, as you can see, is the Proxy Pose, right? And then see, all this is available to me. There's polygrouping that's available to me. And if you want to keep your polygroups, I can show you how to do that as well. And then here's something that, here's another little trick. My mind's going with tricks, Ian. I'm making this, sorry, making this stream being longer than what it needs to be.
Do it. Well, real quick, don't worry, because this Friday we have an Ask ZBrush stream as well. So small taste for what's going to come on Friday as well.
Yeah.
So bring your questions. We already had a few questions in there, so come back Friday as well. And also to check out AskZBrush.com if you want to see what questions are on the top. Okay, there you go, Paul. Quick.
Yep. Okay, so now this is a proxy pose, right? That I can return it. And obviously I want the glove maybe and the wristband to be a part of this. So this is an easy thing to do, like, right? Unzoom it. But you see the shoulder blade, the shoulder armor here, that's not as easy to do. But there is a way in ZBrush where I can unmask geometrical shells like I just did there. And then I can even come to the jacket, right? And do multiple poses in here too. Okay, so there is a way to add to your posing, right? So you can see now if I rotate, this is going to be funny. Okay, so this is going to be a funny pose. You can see all the stuff that's moving with that arm now, right? So if we blur that, I can start moving that arm around, right? And say, let's rotate that. You start having some different movements through here. So see in him's moving, but then see the glove, the shirt, and the shoulder pad. So what I did moving backwards through this is if you guys hold the control key, and because this is a separate mesh, and then click on it and start pulling, you'll get a new mask. But if you let go of control, switch to shift, you see you get the other masking back. Now just move to the open document or move to the arm where there is no mask, and you see we completely unmask that shoulder plate. So once again, control, click on here, now switch to shift and go to unmasked area, and you can see the parts that are there. Okay, and so now that's unmasked. This has got a mask. That's unmasked. So when you guys are going to now go and rotate and do things like this, all right, and then the demo soldier, he has proxy pose, right? The body. So the rest of him doesn't have anything, right? It's just normal. So when you guys go back to T pose, everything's going to go back for you. And then now you need to get your sculpt back on him. You come out of proxy pose and you get your sculpt. So you can go this route too. You can individually pick your subtools that you want to send to transpose, or like Ian showed earlier, you send them all there, right? And then again, the advantage of stencils, once again, thinking about it, I'm going to use it with in conjunction now. I'm going to combine drop 3D as well. So let's take this piece. I'm going to come up with perspective mode. So we're just looking at, let's say, that piece right there. Okay. And then I'm going to rotate it so the camera's looking at it that way. Right. So this is really, really low. So this has actually got dynamic on. This is how low it is. It's super low. Okay. And so now we can, again, once again, drop the 3D. All right. And then now we can use 2.5D brushes where we want here. Right. So I like to, again, I'm a big single layer. I'm going to say I like an alpha 6. I'm going to do line 2. Then I'm going to do something maybe about this big and then draw that out. Then I'm going to do one as a sub. Okay. And draw that out and have a smaller version of that. Okay. Then you also have the ability to switch to something, again, like the clone brush. I'm going to make this be a dynamic clone option. Okay. And I'm going to go with a little bit bigger brush size here. Control key tap, come over here, right? And then I want to start now copying even stuff through here too. So you can copy. And this is dynamically copying. So you're coming in here and then I can start adding copying through here. I'm going to say, let's not do that. Let's take advantage now of the stencils. And let's say, okay, I'm going to say from IMM and let's load model kit. I'm going to click on that. What ZBrush just did for us now using the spacebar move is we've got a sheet full of alphas now, right? So I can now use any alpha here that I want. So maybe here, I like that one right here. And the key point here is wherever your cursor is, you hit spacebar, that's where it goes. And then that's your pivot point. Okay. So now I can be here and I can scale that one up. And then I want to move it maybe in down here. And then let's scale that down there. Right. And then now what brush do I want to use? I'm going to go back to single layer. This time I'm going to do a freehand. I don't need an alpha. And then just start painting with that. And then so you can just paint with all these. Okay, but then I might want something, you know what? I kind of like maybe what's going on in some of these other alphas. So as Ian highlighted for us, okay, let's go ahead and say, I want to use the stencil, but I want to use a single item, right? So let's pick this up and see what we're getting right now, all right? And then we're going to turn off our stencil, and then here's our result. And again, we are up-resing everything for you, okay? So all this is being applied to a really low. So if you look at the bottom, this is really what the topology was. And then now this is what you're getting, right? Because we are adding the resolution there for you. All right. So let's go ahead and undo what I've done. And let's go this route. And this time, before I go in, I'm going to say, let's grab a different IMM brush this time. Let's grab one of these spaceship ones. And let's see what I got. I'm going to hit the M key so you can just see how many pieces are here. And instead of now getting an alpha sheet like this, I'm like, you know what? I really like that one. I'm going to use that one. I want to use that more often. Okay, so I'm going to grab that one. And that is now the selected mesh in here. Okay, so this is the selected one. So now when I do a drop, okay, and then we go back to our stencil, we turn on that one item. We come in here. And now if we select that spaceship one, which is the selected one, we now get that alpha that I wanted, and only that alpha. Okay. And now we can do things like, how about let's scale this down, right? And have that work in there. And I'm going to say, let's go a little bit smaller through there. And then let's move this here. Okay. And then now, once again, just start, what do I want that to look like, right? Do I want maybe a little bit more intensity? Like how strong do I want that to get pushed into the surface through there, right? And then you can switch to something like a clone. And then for now, I don't need a stencil. And then we'll go a little bit bigger brush size. Make sure I got my little dynamic on. And then let's hit Control Rick here. Okay. So this is something that I'd want to be able to do. Okay. So now that I have this, and then you picking it up, right? And then once again, you are going to, pick up here. And then now that's being applied through there, right? But also, which is nice about this drop is not just using like an alpha with a stencil, but using an alpha on a brush too. So you can grab, say, something like this, and then you got advantages like you can do a radial stroke if you want to. And then that stroke can have different repeating. You can have less in here, so you can have less circles. You can go to a grid as well. Have a grid here. Let's use a different alpha this time. Let's pick maybe something like that. So you have a grid that's really high intensity. And let's go Z add. Let's do, say, something like that. And then again, you can move it around if you want. You can scale it down if you want to, and scale it, do whatever you want. And then of course for this also has repeating patterns. So I can say just a 4x1. And now it's 4x1 like this, right? The other thing that opens up this workflow is, let's go back to this line. I really like using alpha 6 for this. And I can say, I want to draw, we'll go Z sub again on that. We'll go a little bit more intensity. So, okay, I want to do this, but what I want to do is I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I want all 4 of those to move together, right? This is the advantage of this drop 3D. We can't do this kind of stuff in a 3D mode. You can't draw multiple strokes now and can just freely move them wherever you want. And not even just moving them, but switching to rotation as well. Maybe I want it to be more like that.
Yep.
Okay.
And
how
the
I'm
ability
doing that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and the ability to use, other 3D models in conjunction to drop onto your scene and then weld them in. Like it's a really good way to add customization to your model.
Yeah, you can grab any piece of geometry that you want and draw that out wherever you want. And then you can move it around in space, right? There's that shadow. Look for that shadow. I don't want the shadow. I want it to kind of be inside the surface.
The shadow node.
right? And then be able to move that around. Okay, so how I was doing this movement, so you guys are aware of that, we'll go back to this. When I was drawing out the strokes, I was holding the control key. So if you hold the control key, while I'm holding control key, those multiple strokes are being now seen as one with the gyro in 2.5D. And now you can move those as a unit. You can scale them as a unit, right? However you want. Okay, so you have all this control to do that. And then again, rotate them as a unit. And then, of course, this is super low topology. We pick it up. And then now we get everything that I was playing with. And we've up-resed that whole area for you that needs to be up-resed to do that. No, you can't puncture a hole through there. Yes, don't go into the shadows. All right, so I just kind of wanted to give you guys another little quick recap of this. And like Ian said, we've got a stream also on Friday that Ian and I will be there for Ask ZBrush. We're going to be doing these on a monthly basis from here on out with you all. Where one thing that I do want to share with you is a website that we've generated for this. So let me share that real quick. So it's just askzbrush.com. And if you guys were not aware of this, you probably wouldn't want to go there. We built this website a while ago. You guys can actually ask questions here. So you can put in your question that you want to ask, maybe a specific workflow or something about a feature. Then you can click Ask ZBrush, and then that'll get sent to us. And not only that, every Ask ZBrush video that's ever been shot, I don't remember the number we're at completely, Ian. I don't know if you remember. It's around 500.
Yeah, it's like just under 500, like 490, like 495 or something.
Right.
There's a lot.
Yeah. So you can search here. All the videos that have ever been done are on this website. So you guys can also search. So if I start putting Dynamesh in or Dyna, you can see it's finding stuff with Dynamesh, dynamic, any that's finding the titles that have that word Dyna in it. So you can search here. You can ask your questions here. And you guys, we want to make sure you guys are getting your questions answered. You can upvote questions that have already been sent to us that we put on here. So there's an answer section and there's a vote on question. You can see this one has already got 12 upvotes. How do you measure the distance between two subtools? So Ian and I are going to answer that on Friday in the Ask ZBrush stream. We're going to take some of these questions that you guys have submitted and the highest ranked ones. We're going to take those and answer them for you. And then every month, we're going to try and do this for you all in a stream. And then we're also going to break them up back into individual videos too, so they can go into the answer section so you can find them individually as well. Right? So that we're not done. We're streaming on Friday with that.
Yep.
All right. Ian, anything you want to add to the Ask ZBrush part?
You just, bring your questions too. We're gonna answer questions from here. But if there's questions that you have that you want to come ask, because Paul and I, we like to talk a lot. We like to ramble, like to rant. So I'm sure we'll go through a couple more questions as well. But yeah, no, super excited about it. So same time, it's 11 a.m. Is it daylight savings time now? So Pacific time.
Pacific Standard Time. Pacific.
Yeah,
we changed our clock ahead, and so does it in Europe too.
Yeah. So 11 a.m. Los Angeles time. Come on in. It'll be fun. I'm excited.
Yeah. If you're not sure, everyone, right? Go to the calendar, okay? Because you're in different time zones. Our calendar gives you your time zone. So go to our calendar right here. So this is part of ZBrush Live. If you want, go to the calendar in here. And you can go to here, and then these are where the streams. There it is right there. Okay, and if you click on it, the time zone for you will be shown here. Right here is where that time zone, right? So you can look at this in a calendar view, or you can look at it in an agenda view. And you can click on any one of these, okay, and find out, hey, when is that person going in my time zone? And so this would be a great way to look at it as well. All right, but so we've been showing you guys a new version of ZBrush, which is going to be called ZBrush 2023, and it's available now. Now. So for those that have been seeing this version is going to be also full of bug fixes. Those bug fixes will be available to all perpetual users, and subscribers will be also getting all the cool new features. So if you're a perpetual, you're going to be getting 2023 with bug fixes that we've also done within this version. All subscribers are getting the bug fixes with also the new cool new features that we've shown today. So there is more information here on ZBrush Central. So I'm going to copy this and put this in the chat for you all. If you don't have that, you can come in here and you can see all the changes that we did, the additions, the fixes that were made in here as well. So there's more information here for you. I'd recommend going through that if you want as well.
Also, too, if you're playing with new features, you downloading this, and then you're like me and you can't sleep because you're thinking about it, and you post stuff, tag us as well. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're, tag us, show us the work because we'd love to see it. Show us what you got.
Yep. Well, that's it. That is everything. This stream, of course, is available to be rewatched as much as you want on our YouTube channel once we're done here. So you can watch that over again. And then hopefully, again, we see you at the next stream. But I also want to highlight for those of you that are looking to maybe get a subscription of ZBrush, there is a promotion happening that you were emailed. That promotion is ending on Friday. So you can get 25% off 1 year ZBrush subscription. That's on your first year. After that, it'll go to the same full price. Or you can get 45% off Maxon 1. Maxon 1 is going to give you guys every piece of software that Maxon is developing. And every piece of software got an update today. So there's new stuff in Redshift. And obviously using Redshift with ZBrush. There's new stuff in Cinema 4D. There's new stuff in Universe. There's new stuff in Red Giant. There's new stuff in Forager as well, our iPad sculpting application. So if you want to go with a ZBrush subscription, there is a promotion that for those of you that were registered ZBrush users, you've already gotten the email. That promotion ends on Friday for 25% off or 45% off a Maxon 1. Again, both those promotions are only for the first year of your subscription. When it renews, it'll go to the full renewal price.
And don't forget to, if you're a student or a teacher, take a look at this link as well, because the pricing for students and teachers is ridiculously low. So go check out the pricing on that as well, because it gives you all access to all the tools. And so, cheaper the better. So definitely go check that out. And yeah, that's definitely it. At least for this stream. We got Friday.
We got Friday.
Friday.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it. I'm Paul Gabriel with the ZBrush team here, and
I'm Ian Robinson with the ZBrush team. And enjoy. Have fun. We'll see you Friday.
you.